Hello, everyone, and a very warm welcome to this extra time brought to you by In the Box. My name is Charlotte Richardson, and I am delighted to be having another fantastic conversation alongside Mark Bradley from the Fan Experience Company. Mark and I share a passion for trying to help clubs and leagues improve their matchday experience, create sustainability, and bring to life a vision to be a wonderful community asset. And for this webinar, we're focusing on diversifying revenues, and we're going to really raise the focus sharply on the match day so that over the summer you and your volunteers can think and plan ahead for how you can absolutely make the most of those Saturdays, of those Tuesdays, whenever those match days might be, to make the most of the occasion. Mark, thank you again for giving up your time. We were talking before recording, weren't we, about this subject and how much of a passion it is from our point of view to help clubs with the small tips to the sort of larger scale strategic ideas, because we know, particularly coming out of COVID, that generating the income is absolutely essential.
Yeah, absolutely. And things are getting better all the time, as you'll know, and as everybody who's tuning in will know. We provide the fan experience assessments for accredited clubs to give feedback on what it's like to be a new fan at their game. It's not an audit, it's a story, effectively, spread out over all the different points of it. And increasingly, we're seeing really, really good examples of clubs that have found traditional and quite innovative ways of, if you like, I say sweating the asset. I think I prefer to, make engagement pay off. I think that's kind of that's where I'd come from. So that's what we'll do today. And if the technology works, hopefully you'll see the first of several slides. I mean, as Charlotte, you and I have done in the past, the slides are really there to prompt a chat between you and me. But of course, it helps keep us on track, and hopefully we'll give you some things to think about as a club. Basically, I did say how engagement pays off, and I wanted to talk of the success that you can have. This, believe it or not, is a National League club's week, well, 24, not quite 24/7, but 7-day a week Broomfields facility down at Bromley. Now, of course, Bromley are a big club, getting bigger all the time. FA Vars finalists 2 seasons ago. I'm pretty sure it's the Vars, not the trophy.
It was the trophy, Mark.
That's
It
the
was the
trophy.
trophy.
I was close. So yeah. I was going to say, because the Vars is usually a couple of tiny clubs from my part of the world, but yeah, FA Trophy a couple of years ago, and then playoffs again in the 22-23 season. And this picture, I think, really is what we're talking about today. We think about football, we volunteer because of our love for football, but actually, if you invest in off the pitch, the results can be remarkable. And I think in a chat the other day, Charlotte, you were telling me just how much that investment has been worth to the club. It's immense, isn't it?
Yeah, absolutely. For those of you joining us who aren't aware, I previously actually worked at Bromley Football Club, and one of my tasks was the launch around Broomfields. And from the very start of the concept of, right, we want to create an area for supporters to eat, drink, come before the game, come after the game, it was all rooted in what did supporters want, from the naming of it to even some of the design elements. And being part of that process from the initial idea to the execution was absolutely fantastic. And it was just building week upon week. The income that it was generating for the football club was eclipsing anything that the kiosks has been able to provide. Of course, there's obviously natural reasons for that. You can see the scale of the building and the investment sort of into the fast pouring pints, but the little details around listening to what supporters would like that bar to be stocked with, certain gins. We had a commercial partnership with Shepherd Neame, a local brewery, who were actually able to give us some money from a marketing point of view. So I suppose even with that first point is looking at your locality and how you can link in with local businesses as well. And like I say, it just completely transformed the money that Bromley was able to make, particularly and especially on a match day.
And it is a great example. And, before you get the feeling that we're only going to be talking about the clubs who can do this, we're not for 1 minute going to suggest that you invest in a giant LED screen with your refreshments menu on it. It can be a microcosm of this. And that's why I think I wanted to focus on kind of the fact that, the power of the small as well. So we're thinking about clubs that have just entered the National League system, that are establishing themselves, that are building teams and creating a match day experience for the first time, something beyond the football, to those at Bromley's level and also others at that level of the game who are able to do a lot more. So we're going to look at that, the opportunity, and then we're going to go through those elements of the match day that you're all familiar with, but just look at some innovative approaches, look at something we've learned from our assessments, and hopefully together over the next half an hour, give you some hints and tips that might help you get to the next level. So that's what we're going to do. Let's start with the opportunity. And there's a slide that Charlotte's seen so often she could probably draw it with crayon and pencil in her sleep. That's coming up very, very soon. But we talk about the power of the small. We're talking here about intimacy, the fact that we don't have giant numbers of people. We're not in England, it's a national game at Wembley. We're small, and it's our intimacy that draws people in. But having done that, though, we do need to keep adapting. Expectations are changing. They're going in two ways when it comes to refreshments. There's an interest in tradition, the freshly pulled cask ale, but there's also an interest in things such as veganism and vegetarianism, street food, ethnic food, and also things like gluten-free. There are lots of things that people are thinking about. We know that, if we grow awareness, one of the things we've found is that sometimes we hide our lights under a bushel, and people could be forgiven that all we're promoting is a day, whereas increasingly everything that we do outside of that is not just something fans want, but something that can generate additional income. So we'll be looking at how we can keep our existing fans coming back, how we can get new ones to come, how we can build advocacy for our clubs, and ultimately diversify income. I know we've talked about partnerships already. We'll come back to that, and we'll finish with a bit on innovation. So that's the slide that Charlotte sees in her sleep, and it's we try and get across to everybody as to what engagement is about. Engagement is not simply putting on a good match day, not simply a match day where, and again, I know what it's like when you're a volunteer at the end of the game, you kind of take a big breath and you think, we did it, we got the match day on. But actually, if we're going to grow advocacy and we're going to grow our clubs, we need to be making sure that match day makes people feel really valued. And without going into the detail of this slide, we're looking to produce lots of people who are those green people at the far right, the ones that will be real advocates of the club. And we've got opportunity to do that at lots of ways through the experience. But this is the business case. If you can provide a match day that creates lots of these promoters, then you're going to be in a great position. So the first stop on our journey for diversifying our income and revenue on a match day is social and refreshments. I think, Charlotte, it's fair to say that that's actually probably the number one reason why a lot of people go to local community football, isn't it?
Absolutely. And particularly post-pandemic, we have seen a bit of a surge in attendances from the National League system all the way down into the non-league football pyramid. And I'm really pleased you made the point about, although we started kind of looking at Bromley and what they've done, the scale of all of these tips and pieces of advice, it doesn't matter where you are in the football pyramid, they should absolutely be relevant to you to take away and look to implement. And anyone that's listening to this, no matter where their club is competing in the football pyramid, have this wonderful special position in that football is the universal language. You can pretty much talk to anyone, and even if you don't like football, your club can still serve a purpose. I was speaking to one of my fellow FA club consultants who is chairman at a non-league club, and he has a number of volunteers and a number of supporters that simply come for that connectivity, for that friendship, for that element of social. So if you can build that, the people will come. And that's the whole point of this webinar, is that when they do come, we obviously want to encourage them to spend a little bit of money while they're there, so that the club can continue to be sustainable and part of the community for many, many years to come. Because I suppose in the background of all of this is the cost of living crisis, which is increasing clubs' overheads a lot. So perhaps this is a timely conversation, because we might be able to give you some ideas to help increase those revenues, to help you cover your costs.
Yeah, and as I say, this is not Charlotte and I sitting down here racking our brains and doing Google searches to come up with things. These are things we've picked up, from clubs, not necessarily always clubs in the National League system, but clubs of similar sizes, sometimes in different sports, where we think these are realistic things that any club, whatever step they are in the National League system, could do. And I've shared on another extra time webinar that Charlotte and I did. I shared this because I just think that it's important that we actually big up the refreshments that we're providing, you know, in our promotion for matches. You know, we often say bar is open, but actually, you know, what bar? How many bars? When is it open? What have you got? What do you sell? Can we sit down? Do you know? And if we agree that the actual social element of the match day is the most important thing, surely we should be promoting that above all else. And also innovation, you know, from the same club, that idea of the actual American style sports, if you like, you know, the first 20 in, you know, it doesn't have to be the first 600 people that come in and get a free t-shirt. We can adapt that. We can do microcosms of those things. So I think that's really important. And I guess when we look at social and refreshments, this is just, you know, a few prompts for you to think about. What have you got that you actually sell at your club that's special or different? Now, I think of, I remember being in Northamptonshire, Northampton and Wellingborough, and everybody talking about ockendo, which is a kind of a pork dumpling thing, Charlotte. I'm not sure. We all have these strange things around the country. You know, we have our stodgy cakes up in the northeast, and you know, inevitably, excuse me, filled with corned beef out of a tin. I'm actually made of onions and potatoes. If you pulled the zip up, you'd find that that's me inside. But you know, what have you got that's, can you do it through a local thing, or can you do it like Whitstable Town have done with the most enormous burger you've ever seen? You know, at Footy Scran are on your case, not necessarily to find something to, you know, poke fun at, but actually increasingly to share the great things we do. And this thing, you know, we only play 2 or 3 times a week, but you know, can we extend that service? You know, we're not suggesting that a club at step 6 that's just beginning to develop is going to open its tea bar, you know, 7 days a week. But what's the next natural step for you to start to fill up other times? You know, obviously a lot of clubs have a social club which is open most evenings anyway, but just what could you do to extend that and actually convert your social and refreshments match day service into something that the community can come to? Happy hours and discounts, I think that's a really interesting one. We've seen that there's lots of ways that you could apply the notion of a happy hour, you know, and discounts again. What about discounts for people who turn up early? What about discounts for people who buy in groups? You know, again, Charlotte, as you've mentioned, these are things that you can create with partners. I think, you know, that's really good, and you'll know, you know, through the work you do about the power of the player and the manager and the magic. You can see that, can't you, from your experience?
Absolutely. And I'm going to reference Bromley again, but only because it was ideas that I brought into the football club that hopefully will help others. But we did have, and I know lots of other clubs do have, a small clubhouse area, which is more likely to have access to Sky Sports, BT, if not both. More often or not, there is a midweek game. So start your marketing, a midday game. Start your marketing around that football game. You know, make sure that you communicate that you're open from this time. You could maybe look and see if there's an incentive of, for the first half an hour, the beer or whatever is a little bit cheaper. Have a little look at what's going on in the wider landscape of the game. But it doesn't always have to be at a cost. We did a sort of, I can't remember what we called it. We never really found a snazzy name for it. But we asked the players and the management to come on board with what we were trying to do in terms of bringing supporters closer to the facility. And every game at 1:15, they would walk through that Broomfield space and do some high fives and meet the team. So even simple ideas like that to try and encourage the players. And it might be hard to convince the manager to do that, but certainly post-match, do your player of the match presentation in there so that people have a reason to stay afterwards as well. And then all of a sudden, in 2 ways there, you'll see your income starting at maybe 11:30 in the morning to 6 o'clock at night, as opposed to 2 to 4.
And I mean, arguably, you're going to be, if you're building a club, you know, from the bottom up and you're just starting, you're going to want to be appointing a coach who actually is outgoing, who does want to talk about what he or she is trying to do with the players. And I think that's really important. I think it's part and parcel of that role to be in the bar. I don't know, 12:30 on a match day, just standing up for 15 minutes and saying, this is what we're trying to do and why. Get behind the team, look at what we're trying to do. And of course, people are now turning up for that. It would, as you say, might ordinarily turn up at 2:45. Now we have talked about diversity and fan types, and I think it's generally true that the more we extend the match day and the more we diversify what we offer, then the more our audience is going to increase, because we're going to find that our club begins to reflect more of the community that's around it. And I think that's really important to think again. Now, we said this in the new fans and attendances extra time webinar, that think about who it is that you want to attract, because if you have a very clear plan to attract families, then that's going to influence everything you do on a match day. It's not just about having a mascot or some entertainment or activities for the kids, but what you might actually sell. You know, it's interesting. If you ask kids what they want to eat now, it's very different to what they wanted to eat 5 years ago. I think that's really, really important. And of course, the one that I really like, but I very rarely see, is a discount that is actually hinged on the performance of the team. So that does two things. If you're not having a great season, it doesn't cost you any money. And also, it actually implies fans staying behind after the game and remaining, you know, in the bar to take advantage of whatever that discount is. You know, and there could be a variety of things that happen, but just, you know, if the team wins, very simple. If they win, then there's a special offer and a special discount in the bar afterwards. You know, we've talked about the loss leader idea, if you like, but I just want to introduce this idea, Charlotte. See what you think about it. Fan zones, at national league system level. What do you think about that?
I think it's a really good practical way to improve the fan experience. And if you're improving the fan experience, then ultimately you are going to increase and diversify your income. I know for lots of clubs, sometimes when attracting families and when attracting youngsters is a priority, it can sometimes cause a little bit of a problem in terms of they might be running around, they might then be disrupting some of the loyaler, older supporters, and you don't ever want to isolate anyone. You want everyone to be able to enjoy the experience. Actually, having a bit of a contained area is good for a number of reasons, and practically it enables you to have a bit of control over how things are going logistically on a match day.
Yeah.
And I think they're a really creative, fun thing to do. Like
Mhm.
sometimes it's hard to get people to give up their time, but if you were going to say to committee members over this summer, look, we want to create a fan zone, do you fancy getting involved? I feel like that's the kind of thing that people would actually like to give
Yeah.
up a little bit of time, and people and businesses in the local area might make donations to support.
Definitely, definitely. And I think when people hear the phrase fan zones, they'll immediately think about the latest fan zone they've seen at, I don't know, Premiership or Championship level, you know, with live music, with all sorts of things. But again, there is a microcosm version of it. And, you know, we know a number of organizations that provide fan zones, you know, and they can be leased. You know, you can subscribe, you can have one area, two little units or 3 units. But actually, at our level of the game, some clubs already have things like summer fates. You know, my last game down at Bognor Regis, a Bognor Regis Lewis game in April of 22, felt like a summer fete. The community was there. There were different stalls. And actually, that's just another version of the fan zone. So I think that's something to, I think, leave people with. And I've been enjoying the fan experience company, you know, branded green tea here, because we're talking about refreshments. So I have an excuse to keep my voice going. But retail and merchandise. Now, our visits, our assessments highlight a really big spectrum. Some clubs don't sell anything. Oh, well, you think they don't sell anything because they don't tell you they sell something. But when you turn up on the day, you discover that they've got like some pin badges, they've got some mugs, they've got a few things behind the bar. So tell people that you've got that. Tell people. Focus on one thing that you sell that you think is a great match day product. Do that. So some clubs don't sell anything. Some clubs just sell online, but actually think about making sure you have something really good that you can offer fans on a match day. Now, some of those fans are groundhoppers, and we'll come back to groundhoppers before, I introduce myself as a groundhopper. If I'm doing an assessment and I turn up to a club and they see me as new, and so many people will walk up when they see a new face and say, "Hi, is this your first game?" Which is brilliant. And when they ask me where I've come from, I usually say, "Oh, we're visiting friends, and I thought I'd do a bit of ground hopping." And there are ground hoppers everywhere, so that's something to think about. This I love. Now, this comes from Rose Hill Junior School in Cheshire, I think around 5 years ago, so before the pandemic. And this was a sticker album that the junior school invented for their own players. And I think if a junior school can invent this at that level, and you can see the impact of doing something like this, we can do it at our level. Printing good quality production these days is much easier than it was. And I just love that. When I saw it, I thought it was fantastic. It actually got onto the BBC as well. And if you want to find out about Rose Hill Junior Club's sticker album, that's where you'll find more information. And I guess, Charlotte, if I'm summarizing, you've got to get the basics right. Like I say, you've got to have something. You've got to tell people you've got something. And you've got to have a telling them where to find it. Do you agree? If it's not there, people aren't going to look for it, are they?
Absolutely. I think that communication is really essential, and a lot of clubs could perhaps use the summer to do a bit of an exercise in terms of looking at their website and creating a few scenarios of putting themselves in the position of where do I go to find out about the club shop? Where do I go to find out the price of a ticket? And just check that exercise. And one rule of thumb I always advise when speaking to clubs, leagues and volunteers is, if it can't be found within 3 clicks, then you need to do something about it. And it's again just part and parcel of modern day life, that I think there's a statistic that we have people's attention for 12 seconds. If people can't find it, we're a bit impatient, we move on, or we just don't think it was there. And again, I know how frustrating it is when you put your heart and soul into something and someone goes, "Oh, I didn't know that was happening," or "I didn't know you did that."
Yeah.
So yeah, try and nullify that by making sure that your website and your social media as well, those free tools that you use, are doing a good job in showcasing what you're doing.
No, absolutely. A little post on social media that says, "Coming to the game for the first time, don't forget to pick up this in the thing, which is located behind this," etc. And the next one, it's a little doff of my cap to a team back in the homeland where I come from, Morpeth Town, who remember several years ago hearing the story that they were doing special things for kids that were wearing Morpeth Town colours when they came to games. I don't know. I can't recall the exact details. May have been free, but I just think that you can do offers, you can do discounts, you can actually tie in not just retail but refreshments into people who are wearing your colours. I think that's something that you could think about. Now, taking a step back into our work with the EFL and the Family Excellence Scheme, that's now, believe it or not, 17 years old. One thing that we look at for clubs to have is a pocket money range. Now, not just to have it, to tell people about it. And clubs like Rotherham United actually put a typical range on their website with the prices. So if a family are taking their kids to the game, they can actually budget effectively. And we know that Durham women do this as well with the cost of transport. So I think it's really important to think, what is my pocket money range? Now, it could be the pin badge. They're perennially out of stock pin badges. I always seem to turn up at a club where they said, "Oh, we've run out now." And, I've started going for the first game of the season just to see if people are having me on, but there you go. Now, we've talked about, Charlotte, haven't we? The player, the manager. If you have a mascot, Horsham have a mascot, being there at these locations, not just in the bar to encourage people to come in and hear from the manager or the players direct, but in the club shop. Now, it may be that your club shop's a trestle table. That's absolutely fine. Have a couple of players stood behind the trestle table. People can get a picture. Kids just, love presence with players. However, whatever your position is in the national league system. Would you agree with that? Yeah.
Totally agree. And again, if you are sometimes struggling with difficult managers that guard their players as if they're Manchester City before a game, then you can always recall the injured players, make the most of injured players on a match day, part of their commitment to you and your football club. And then also, I think a piece of advice is, lots of the clubs that join us, most of the most proactive clubs that will be on this call right now, have really rich histories bring back some of your old players as well. Don't, see how you can kind of bring them back into the football club and into the fold to, again, keep the conversation going and be a talking point. And, who was that player that captained the side for 5 seasons? Invite him, make a bit of a fuss about it. And then people might come and, have a photo. I think across all parts of the football pyramid, men's, women's, and otherwise, particularly for youngsters, they don't care who that player is. Just having that bit of interaction, something to sign, someone to have a photo with, adds that sort of magical moment that doesn't cost anything.
True. And, I think that these are things that I've seen everywhere. All of these positive things we see on our travels all of the time. What is it? Something like 75 assessments now, just at National League system level since last March. And we're seeing this all of the time. And that's why we're saying that, we know they're there, they work. So more people should try them. But the one that I wanted to finish on for this particular section is one that I think I see clubs considering, clubs recognizing that it's important, but not always kind of taking it into, something which is manifestly part of their match day, and recycling and the remake industry, which is very new. You've got an audience, you've got a lot of people who are coming to your club on a match day. You've also got a need. There's a cost of living crisis. People are looking to donate things, but also people are looking to get things at an affordable price. So whether it's, recycled bikes, whether it's recycled furniture, or just smaller items, look to see if there's a community organization, there is in every town, who is doing reuse and remake. Offer them a presence. And then, that you may decide just to let them, keep the profits, but you could actually make an arrangement that the club themselves gets a small percentage of the money that's made. We've seen clubs offer themselves as a hub for environmental opportunities. And I do think that idea of the reuse, remake market and recycling generally, there's an opportunity there for clubs to get involved. That by definition, that brings more people into the club. So there's additional revenue there. It also shows your club as being different, prepared for the needs of, Generation Z, for example, which is a long time in my past, I have to say. But again, something to think about. Have you come across recycling on your travels, Charlotte?
Do you know what? I haven't. I think the only thing that sprung to mind when you said that is, again, I was like, yeah, what a fantastic idea. I've seen a lot of sort of food bank appeals, and they are always so popular. So that always screams to me, again, just what kind of catalyst football clubs can be for their communities, and how even ideas like that just help the footfall whilst you're still doing a really good thing, an altruistic thing as a football club, because we should be, good pillars in society. But at the same time, you're talking to different audiences. But I thought, no, what a fantastic idea. In football, we all want to win 3 points, and that can make us quite insular and quite focused and maybe a little bit protective sometimes. But I think the most successful football clubs are the ones that open up their doors and make that invitation. And you just never know. Sometimes all you have to do is ask, and you might get some really interesting local organizations come to you with the ideas that you just had never thought about. So never be afraid to put yourselves out there.
Now, of course, one of the most traditional parts of football at community levels in this country is the football program and the halftime draw. They're part of the attraction. Every time I go and do an assessment, I buy some tickets for the halftime draw, and I'll buy a program. Now, I can't, as a caveat here, I can't promise that I'm up to speed with the changing rules at league and at national level about having to produce a program. But now we're in an age where there are online programs. Some clubs don't have programs. I'm going to say have one, but it could be online. But we've also got clubs in parts of the country looking at things like monthly magazines and even quarterly magazines. But the program itself is a huge opportunity to reflect your community, to support its interests. And I know football clubs sometimes feel a little shackled by having a lack of information. Some clubs are now just handing out team sheets, which is very exciting because people like them. They're fantastic. I went to a game, Worcester City versus Stone Old Alanians. I went to a game there about a month ago, and it was fantastic to see that when both teams came in to have their meals in the clubhouse after the game, there were kids with the team sheets walking around the tables, asking the players if they could sign those autographs. Now, as I say, programs, again, we pick them up everywhere we go. We see some fantastic ones. I see it as part and parcel of a day at the footy. There's a couple of great examples here. Sleaford Town on the left, I think I'm correct in saying that. And I think that's, who's that on the right? I think that might be, I can see at the top. It's someone.
Someone.
Broadbridge. It's Broadbridge Heath. Broadbridge Heath. Yeah, lucky I've still got my eyesight at these advanced years. But yeah, just a couple of typical examples. But again, let's think. As Charlotte said before, let's just think about that experience. Put yourself in the shoes of the fan. Are they going to be able to know that you have a program? Traditionally, you'd have a volunteer near the gate selling them. But, have you got a mobile seller? Do you promote it? Do you have people walking around or a volunteer walking around the ground selling them? And also kind of there's that next level of opportunities as well. And some of the things we picked up are, interesting content, guest contributors, having a local school where you can build it into their curriculum. So each week a young child offers a match report. And believe you, I think this is really nice, because one of the worst things you want is spite in post-match analysis and criticism. That's, it's not what we're about, football. We're celebrating the game, especially at our levels of the game. But actually the one age group you can let be honest is the 7 and 8-year-old kid, who says, frankly, the keeper didn't come out quickly enough. You can have a 7-year-old can say that and it's not really an issue. But think about things like that. Think about different parts of the community and giving them a page. Because the more that the community see themselves reflected in your match day, the more that they're going to be able to appreciate it. I think bundling is always a great idea. So the idea of just maybe adding a little bit to your admission fee, but including, a free program. I think Colchester United in the EFL were the first club to actually just give the program free as part of the match ticket. And I think that actually makes a fan feel more valued than if they'd actually paid less for the match ticket and still bought the program. So I think bundles are going to be really important. And then, of course, having tokens that can only be accessed if you buy a program. I think they're a useful way of building up program sales, but also encouraging people to use those tokens on other services you're providing on a match day. And the last point on that list, Charlotte, what do you think about that? Offering commission to your program sellers? Is it a common thing that happens because it's done by volunteers? Would it actually lead to more programs being sold? What do you think?
I think again, I always like ideas that are a little bit different, and there is nothing more frustrating than if you're volunteering your time and putting together a Matchday magazine that you're super proud of, that's full of great content. Then come 6 o'clock on a Saturday, you're staring at a big box of them that just haven't been sold because 9 times out of 10 they haven't been pushed or promoted hard enough. So why not give it a go, see if that impacts? And yes, we say that volunteers give up their time for all manners of reasons, and some often don't want paying, but actually if it puts 10 or 20 quid and they can buy themselves a pint at the end of the game, or you make it a friendly competition amongst the volunteers who are, absolutely, because otherwise I'm really scared we will lose matchday programs, and I don't want to. So everyone has to carry together to make sure that we keep.
Absolutely. And I think, one of the kind of big trends and themes that we talk about is young people. It's been difficult to get young people to be engaged in coming to football matches. And when you get to those who are still studying, it's usually because they're having to work at weekends to be able to make the money, to support themselves. So by actually making the match day an opportunity for them to make some money, could actually work out. So again, a bit left field, but hopefully some of you will pick up on that and consider it. So coming to the end now, we've not got too much to go through, but I just want to summarize some of the more interesting innovation that I've seen. And this is a cracker. I've made it quite small on the page there because it's a picture I've pinched off the internet. But this is from the Northwest Counties, the Northern Premier League, or the Northwest Counties League, but certainly up in the Northwest, going back about 5-6 years. They hit on the idea of having a season book. Yeah, there you go. 7 years ago, 2016, 2017, a sticker book. And basically for groundhoppers that are hopping around that league, taking in games, they can get a hold of the book and they get the stickers at the clubs that they visit and they fill the book as they go along. Now, I think for different age groups, obviously stickers, as we said at the start with Rose Hill Junior School, that's a great idea. But anything that's collectible, anything that actually, addresses the needs of groundhoppers, I thought this was a really interesting piece of innovation. And I just wonder whether at a league level, our clubs can work together to do something that's not club driven, but actually league driven. What are your views on kind of league innovation?
Love that.
Charlotte?
Absolutely love that, because I know from having been well, I am a volunteer at a league. Again, sometimes you can just get a little bit stuck into the governing side of it, the having to dish out fines side of it, the welfare and safeguarding, which is incredibly important. And that's all quite the heavy elements of our game. Developing the game and enriching the game is the stuff that personally gives me the biggest amount of satisfaction. And I imagine it will do for those that are joining us on this. So I think it's brilliant to think that wider picture, and for the league to set the example with that, because then clubs can be more collaborative. And some of the
Absolutely.
best ideas that I've seen in recent years, particularly when it comes to boosting attendances, which in turn increases revenues, is when clubs have come together to market. You
Yeah.
see it a lot around Christmas time and New Year's, when sometimes they play each other back to back. But why not reach out to some of your
Yeah.
rivals in the league, or actually, again, be smart about it? What's your lowest attended match? Is it the time that you welcome that team north of the country and you're based south? Can you then do something where if you buy a ticket as an away fan, you get a meal included, and then it's reciprocated the other way? You know, there's so
Yeah.
many ideas sometimes about just working together.
There are, and yeah, we're obviously we're conscious that this does require even more commitment. But as we've said at the start of these sessions, we're in this because we love it, and sometimes the things that we have to do, blind us to the things that actually are the ones that add all of the value. So just a few things, just to summarize some of the innovation we've talked about. They're free for the first 10 fans. Fan zone is not the giant thing that's outside. I don't know, NAC Breda in the Netherlands, they had a particularly impressive one. It's something that's very small, almost country fete style. Bundling's a great idea. What's your one big product? What about things like Ockendon and Northamptonshire? Things that are relevant to you. We've talked about sticker collections, and we've talked about the groundhopper. And we even talk about the match day host. I mean, I think this is absolutely key. We've not specifically referenced it, but it does come up in all of these extra time webinars that we host. And that, the first person someone sees on a match day is your biggest opportunity. As a friend of mine said, you only ever get one first match day. So how can we make it better? And I think that the more we appoint really outgoing, engaging, knowledgeable people to the match day host role, and their number one role is to engage people, new faces, existing faces, to promote the things that the club does, then I think the more we will drive this secondary revenue up and achieve it. And the last point on there is something that we do a lot of work around Europe, and we're working in Moldova at the moment, which is Europe's poorest country. It's on the border with Ukraine. It has a lot of challenges. And one of the ways that they're getting extra people to come in and spend is by denoting certain games to certain themes or national celebrations, or even in the case of Moldova, national emergencies. So think about Women's International Day, which usually falls in March. Think about Children's Day. Think about having a family day. All of these things will help you move forward. So, Charlotte, I think it's time to summarize our little webinar this morning. For me, I think that is what we're aiming at. The epitome of a successful club at the league system. On the pitch, obviously, are the trophies, although for most of us, it's just finishing it emotionally intact. But I think this is it for me. It's a thriving clubhouse where you can see where the club shop is, where you can watch a big game on the telly at lunchtime, where people can get together. I love the branded cups here that you can see at this particular club, bit of recycling going on there. And, you can see there's a real mix of the community in that picture. That's what it's all about to me. But actually achieving that and keeping that going relies on you just taking that little extra step to think about those things we do, and hopefully successfully plan for next season, in ways that will start to just add a little bit of income for you. And of course, that breeds success and the freedom to do more things. Charlotte?
Mark, I think you've just summarized it all perfectly there. And the little steps build to the big strides that we want you to feel that you can go away and make this summer. I know we've taken some examples, and it might sometimes feel a little bit daunting, but absolutely those examples, from the Horshams to the Bromleys, they all begun with one small little step. So hopefully people can take that and then just run with it, and get in touch with us as well, and tell us about how you're sort of finding that and building that at your club as well. It'd be great.
And yeah, brief summary for you. And then, as we always say, as well as all the support you can get from Charlotte and from Tom and the team, from the Extra Time webinars and everything else that the FA team is doing to support you, we're there as well too. We're part of the team. We have a podcast, the Fan Experience. We think about you in the case studies or the stories we talk about, and you can reach out and contact me if you have any specific questions. But thanks again for spending time with us today. Over to you, Charlotte, to wrap up, and I'll hope to see you again on another webinar soon.
Thank you, Mark, again for giving up your time and bringing to this webinar so many fantastic examples. Thank you for taking time out of your busy diary to come and join us and learn more about the fan engagement. We have one more webinar coming very, very soon, so make sure that you join us on the online community Clubhouse, where you can find all of these webinars, but also lots of resources, including blogs written by Mark and many, many others. So until next time, goodbye and take care.
Goodbye.